Hey guys, Mark Farashi, ProTech Dog Trainer, if you're in the room. Give me the high five over here in the chat so I know you're here. I see that we've got 3 people. I just thought I'd kind of come on instead of just being on a taped version of me just yakking at the screen. I'd come on and see if I could get you guys to be a little bit more interactive with me. All right. And the reason I thought of doing this was mainly so that we could kind of spin off of that live stream podcast that I saw that Ivan Balabanov did the other night with Larry Crohn's, and I made a mention today about it in one of my videos in regards to that, and it was interesting, but I didn't understand too much of how he was trying to lay it out, and I don't know if it was because Ivan was trying to pin Larry down or what, but you do something like that, the way I look at it is you want to be educational, right? You want to try to educate the people that may not know as much as you, and make it as educational as you possibly can. So if you go ahead and say something in the chat, I'll be able to know you're here. I got 5 people in the room right now. But I kind of wanted to do a spin-off in regards to that podcast that Ivan did the other night with Larry, and explain to you how I do my system of layering in the Stim Collar and how I work it. And whether you realize it or not, and are not aware of it, a lot of people get out there and they act like everything they do is that they're a genius and it's all coming from them. There really is nothing that's in the dog training field that hasn't been done before, that's not being done already, that's not already out there. We all basically grab information from the internet stream and from the outside world, maybe hanging on the ships and crowd or whatever, and we grab, steal, take, and make anything we can possibly our own. If we're good at what we do and we want to add as many what I call tricks in the tool bag, as many tools in the tool bag as we possibly can get. You never know when you're going to need one, right? You never know when there's a dog that might be more receptive to one method versus another. And I'll give a good example of that with that Dogo Argentina. He came in, and if you remember, what the heck's the dog's name? Dogo Argentina, that is, real bitchin' name too. Anybody can remember the name of that Dogo Argentina? Type it in there. I do brain blanks when I'm sitting here trying to talk about things. Whatever, but right away, I took him out and did my 3-day evaluation, getting to know the dog and just letting him be a dog and kind of getting a feel for the animal. And the first thing I sensed in that dog was that he was all very true, dominant type of a dog. And sniffing, he's a hunter. That's what they bred the Dogo Argentinas to do, is hunt. And he's a lot more of a pity type of a nature in him. You know, he's not a pit bull, but there's been a lot of breeds that have been bred to make that end product. And the terriers, pit bulls, things like that have been bred into this dog that produced that product. The dog was very in tune to want to sniff, to smell, and his brain would go right into that. And so I sensed the stature of the animal being very stout, that he would be very receptive to the old style Keeler aversive type of methods. And so right away I did that with him, and it worked really well with him. He's a great dog, great temperament. But there was a good example that I went to the old school methods of doing things. And the reason I did that was because I just sensed in my gut that this was the best way to approach it. Food is great, he's going to want food, but you're only going to get so far with that, right? So it's a mixed bag. That's why we call me a balanced trainer, because I was using food. I got the dog into toys to bring up drive, and because I need that for protection. I need the dog to have a prey drive, and to be going into prey drive for the protection aspects of things. So with a balanced trainer, I'm adding a lot of little things. It's not all yank and crank. It's not all aversives, but it's not all missing any of the other stuff either. There was food involved. There was toys involved. And so one of the tools that we have that's really controversial is the Ecollar, or what I call the Stim Collar. That's short for stimulation, right? And I call it the Stim Collar for a reason. I call it the Stim Collar because then that allows me, when I say Stim Collar right away out in public, someone will ask me, what is that on the dog's neck? It's a Stim Collar. What's that? They stop. They open their mind to learn. If you say e-collar or electric collar, and you have somebody that doesn't agree with that at all, right away their mind and the drawbridge comes down, and they've got walls up, and they no longer are willing to take in information. Then from that point, I can't educate them. I can't teach them. They're not receptive to any of the knowledge. Right away, they have preconceived ideas, and they right away will put up the walls. So I call it a Stim Collar for that reason. I want to keep the person's mind open as long as possible so that I can educate them and teach them, okay? And I have a lot of opinions about the e-collar and really direct ones. I have a lot of agreement with Larry. I do not teach the dog anything with a stim collar. It's only there to reaffirm what he's already knows what he's supposed to be doing, and you're using a classic avoidance and escape training. Okay, that's bottom line. But the reason that we have, and you'll hear me emphasize this a lot when I'm talking about the e-collar, is the reason that we have such an attitude of layering in the collar in the proper way is so that the dog understands something he has no clue. He doesn't understand what this little tingling feels like. And if you turn it too high, it's going to hurt. And he's confused, he's upset, and he's not going to be receptive to learning with the tool if I go right away and turn it up to a high level. So the first thing I need to do is I need to teach the dog to turn that collar off and to give the power to the dog. Okay. Now, where do I get all these concepts? Where do I get this verbiage? From reading and learning from many, many years and understanding the industry and where these collars came from. And you'll hear it if you're into learning about it and you're aware of it. The old style collars that were like a brick, and you had to take out a little plug to change the voltage and the current, and then you'd get it set back up, and then you'd go again. And they were a pain in the butt until they came with rheostat, and they came out with these little small ones that allow you to change the voltage and the current level right on the dial. Right, I can do this right on the fly. Okay, and when that happened, we now have the ability to have a lot better control of the collar. Now, the other thing that they did is because we had other companies that came into it. In the old days, there was like 2 or 3 companies, and I can't really remember all of them. I do remember one that was very distinct because I was the one following this. It was Tritronics. Tritronics was bought out by Garmin. Now, if you go online and you look up e-collars and you find the Tritronics, you're going to find their brand. It's under the Garmin letter because Garmin owns Tritronics. Okay. And the thing with all they're doing is they're just taking that brand and putting it in with their whole range of products, right? They haven't changed it much. It's only got a 0 to a 10, 0 to a 7. They're very archaic in that way. They haven't gotten into increasing the quality or got like Ecollar technologies. This guy's into it, and he's doing a lot of studying, and they come out with all kinds of things, okay? So the old Tritronics was very 0 to 7, 0 to 10, whatever. I don't think they make any higher levels of that. And the voltage and the currents have a lot more tendency to be high. You think about it. You're going to 1, then 2, then 3. That step up is pretty dramatic by the time you hit 5 and 6, right? By the time you hit 10 or 7, that's the highest it's going to go, and it's going to hurt the dog, right? It's going to give him a punishment threshold, right? Now that current and that collar is applicable with things that you're needing with a high drive dog, a dog that's chasing game that won't quit. His drive level is taking him up. So because of that, maybe that's more apropos to use a collar like that. But nowadays, they've got collars like this one put out by Ecollar Technologies. This is the Easy Educator, little small collar. I like this one a lot. I like the ergonomics of the collar itself. They've got some that are that round puck. I don't like that as well because I like the ergonomics on this one. My fingers have access to all the buttons, and it's a lot more user-friendly. And I know that by the fact that I've had those other collars and I've used them. That's just my personal opinion, my personal preference, right? So the fact that you can go from a 0 to 100 or 125 with some of the other brands allows you to have a lot more subtle of a gradient, right? I have a lot more control. Because by the time you're up to 50 to 60 to 80, where it starts to get to be where it's a punishment level, where that's going to hurt the dog a little bit and zap him, that allows you to be able to go up. And most trainers, most of them, not all of them, most that are pretty well educated will tell you if they're using it on the low stem, okay? So the first thing we do, and what I want you to look up first is Dobbs. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and paste it in here. I put the link. The Dobbs were a couple, a wife and a husband, that went around for Tritronics. They put a whole bunch of articles together. They put a bunch of training together, and they were hired and paid by Tritronics, by the company, to go out and do all these seminars to educate all the people. They would go to bird dog functions because bird dog people are a lot of times using the e-collar. They would go all over the place, law enforcement, all kinds of things. So they had a huge library of this literature, and they still have their site online, but it's pretty much of a dead site. You go to a lot of the links and they'll be dead. There won't be anything there. But they do have a lot of the written stuff that's still there. The Schützen stuff. I was just over there looking at before we went live. The bird dog area is full of different articles, and I haven't even read any of those. I need to go over and check those out. You can learn a lot from the bird dog people. All right. So all this information is there, and it gives a very straightforward way of applying the e-collar in a very quality fashion. Okay. So the first thing that you need to do is you need to layer in the collar and teach the dog, give the dog the power to turn it off at a low stim. So we need to find the working level. You'll hear this talked about a lot. First, we're going to set it up at 1. Then we're going to go to 2. We're going to keep doing that. We're going to be watching the dog in a neutral lab area. No distractions. An area that he's just blasé. There's no distractions. Nothing coming at him, stimulus from the outside world. It's your neutral lab. It's where I work out in my field most of the time with my dog. It's an area that we don't have any. If you have distractions coming at you, it's not going to be fair to the animal because he's not going to feel it. And you've heard me talk about this before, where I'm giving a lot of my opinions and based in this. And I have a whole bunch of videos that I've done, a whole series of videos that you can learn from. So this information is available to you. I'm going to go ahead and give it to you. And the biggest thing that I have is some certain key stuff. This is the Dobbs site, and I'm going to put it in the text area. You guys can grab that and find it and read, learn. That's what it's all about. I don't mind that at all. Again, all this information is out there, guys. All you got to do is look for it. All right. So there's that. That is the Dobbs site, and the Dobbs site has a lot of good articles that are still there, and you can learn a lot from it. Okay. So some of the opinions that I have and some of my attitudes are based on being around this industry for a lot of years. One of the first things I do is I never take a dog and just slap an e-collar on him. That would be totally unfair. He has no ability to understand what you're trying to do with an e-collar. And there's a lot of companies that are out there. There's one big one, and I won't give the name of it, but all they do is e-collar. And they slap an e-collar on a young dog, and they're selling their services, and this is what they're using from day one. I don't agree with that. That's just my personal opinion, okay? I don't think it's fair to the animal. I think that when they're younger, their nerves are not set up enough that they're able to handle it as well. And when it's not a matter that it doesn't work, guys. It works. You see them producing product and stuff. But now you're trying to educate your customer that's an ignorant layman, doesn't understand dog psychology, and hasn't went out to get the right education to be able to use a tool like this. And in our world, we live in a world where everything we do is just hitting a light switch. I hit my remote for the TV. I hit a light switch, and we have this mental attitude of just being able to grab something and zap, that's going to work, right? We're just turn on the lights or whatever. The e-collar is not one of those items, okay? The e-collar is something you need to understand how to do what you're doing to condition the animal and use the proper techniques and build up a communication baseboard. And then for myself, then and only then will I bring in the e-collar. I will layer it in once the dog has a good understanding of the conditioning. I've got the marker words all set up, no, good, and yes. I've got him doing behavior loops, going to that little table you see me working with. Yep, my explosion release is in. I'm doing all kinds of things to set up a communication baseboard for the dog has learned to learn, okay? So now, once he's at that certain level and maturity and everything else, then I feel he's at the right level, then I'll go ahead and say, okay, now he's ready where I can maybe able to use the benefits of the e-collar. Okay, and only then is where I'm going to apply it. Okay, I'm going to put it in. I'm going to layer it into his training program. All right. How do we do that? The first thing we want to do is we want to find the dog's working level. Okay, so we're going to set it at 0. We're going to have a neutral lab, no distractions coming at him. He's just sitting there blasé. I'm not going to distract him. I'm just going to let him kind of chill out, and then I'm going to hit the button, and I'm going to wait and see if the dog has any reaction. I'm going to go to 2. Then I'm going to go to 3. I'm going to be watching that dog very closely. Okay. And I get to a 4. And a dog in general sense, this is a generality because you don't every dog is different, right? Most dogs will start to feel that stimulation at about a 4 or higher, okay? Some dogs have gone up to about a 12 when they're first done. Buddy is a good example of that. Very high drive, high energy dog, and his brain is all over the place. Even with a neutral lab, in other words, no distractions, he's distracting himself because his energy levels are all over. So I'll get to about a 10. I've had it at about 12. 10 or 12 is where he started out with it. But I've had dogs that are all the way down to a 4, and they can feel it. And if that's the case, I'm going to start his education at that level. And all I'm trying to do is convey the thought to the dog that when he feels this stimulation, that it will go away when he complies with something he already knows. So we need to teach that to the dog. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find his working level. Then I'm going to put him on a long line. I'm going to give him a release. He already knows that. 300 is my release, right? I have already a working baseboard of communication with the animal to be able to use. I'll say 300, go potty, and I'll let him go out and do his thing. And then I'll catch a moment where I feel that it's the right time to do it. I'll hit the stem and I'll move backwards. And if the dog is a little confused, he doesn't know what it is, I may even give a pull on the leash. As soon as he looks to me, and I'll say the dog's name, so I'll say Rocky, and I'll be hitting that stem at the same exact time that I say the dog's name, right? Then I'm moving backwards a little bit, and the first thing the dog's going to go is he's going to feel the stem, he's going to kind of turn around to me. Right when he does, I'm going to let the button go, and I'm going to try to motivate him to come all the way to me. With food, I'm going to start some of my other body language and posture that he's already aware of. My hands going down, he's coming into the hands for the hot dog. It doesn't matter. I'm going to give him high praise, and I'm going to praise the dog when he gets to me. It doesn't matter if he comes all the way to me. All I'm trying to do is convey to the dog that the stimulation has gone away when he's done a certain thing. He doesn't know what that is yet. He has no clue. The first time he turns to you and you let go of the button, you think he knows it? Heck no. Why is he going to know it? Repetition and pattern, right? That's what's going to make him start figuring it out, that the stim goes away when he's doing a certain behavior. He doesn't know it yet. So we're going to use that long line, him being out on his own, saying Rocky. Right when I say his name, I hit the button. Right when he turns to me, I let it go, and I try to motivate the dog into me, and I'm moving backwards with my body language. A lot of high praise. Good boy. And all I'm trying to do is offset something that he doesn't understand. He has no clue what this little tingling feels like, okay? And it's kind of like, almost think of it like a mosquito bite. If you were heavy into the TV and you were watching that TV and your concentration level and a mosquito was biting you, you ever have that happen where a mosquito's biting and you really don't even realize it? You kind of feel it on the back of your brain, and all of a sudden you go, damn it, and you smack your hand, right? You just turned off that stim collar, right? But that's the whole concept. Your brain finally catches up and you feel this, and it doesn't hurt you. It's just an irritating type of thing, and you make it go away by killing the mosquito, right? It's the same thing. He's coming back towards you, and as soon as he does, you let go of the button, and the dog, and with the collar, it has a constant, and it has an ability to go momentary, which means tap, tap, right? So I always start with the constant, right? Because now if I've got it on low and I hit that button right when I say the dog's name, Rocky, it's on, and all of a sudden he turns to me and I let it go, he's getting to feel this tingle for a little bit more of an extended time. And all of a sudden it goes away, and right away I'm reaffirming that he's had the right answer. That's what you're trying to do, is show the right answer to the dog so that he understands that when I complied to something and I came in, the stim went away, right? And now we're going to build on that concept. We're going to convey that thought to the dog a little bit more. So I may do this one day with a little short session. I may even do two sessions in a day, and I'm going to do it short and sweet. I'm going to mix it up, get into some other things, get away from it, come back to it the next day. And I may do that long line work for 2 or 3 days in a row until I feel that the dog at least has a concept that he is responding when I hit the button. Okay, so I'll hit the button a little bit earlier than I say the dog's name. I'll say Rocky, and you'll notice that right when you hit that button, you say Rocky, button goes on, Rocky, and right away he'll turn to you and he'll start coming to you because he's been pattern and routine. If you're going backwards and giving him that other body language to come into you, right? So he's understanding, starting to learn and understand that when I turned around and came towards him, the stim went away, right? Now, he doesn't understand the total concept yet. We need to follow through with what we call the three-way turn-on. What that basically means is I want to do this in 2 or 3 other areas that are very easy for him to be able to comply with, that he can take that learning concept and that conveying the thought to the animal to the next level. And there's 2 or 3 of them that we do, because now when you do that, you've now given him a baseboard of ability to understand what he is doing to get this stim to go away from him, okay? So the next one that we will do, after we feel the dog's got that concept understood, doesn't matter if the dog always comes to me. It matters if the dog turns around to turn off that collar, right? So now the next one that I will do a lot of times is I will use either the table that I've already conditioned the behavior loop. Think about this. I've already told the dog, you hup. And if you've watched my videos, you've seen me use that table a million times, okay? I start out all my training with that table. I get the dog to go up on the table with a hup, and then I start teaching him to have an explosion release, and I say, yep, and I bounce backwards, my hand going down for the luring that I'm going to use in luring the dog's behavior, right? Because that's what I use. I use a lot of the Michael Ellis, a lot of that balance marker training type of work. That's my baseboard nowadays. I didn't start that way. I started back in the 70s when we were using Yankee Crank. We were using Ecollar's method, which is a very distinct way of using avoidance and escape training. And it worked. We were all using it. Every trainer that I know of was using that same method. It's avoidance and escape. And so is this, okay? You're teaching the dog how to turn it off, how to avoid or how to escape this stimulation. Okay? Does that make it bad? No, not if you're using it properly and you're conditioning it and you're layering it into the dog properly and being fair to the animal. What's fair? I don't just slap it on his neck and just start doing this on day one. He's already got a whole plateau of understanding and learning to learn already. He already knows his markers. He already knows what yep means. He already knows what his release word. He's got a bunch of things that he already knows, right? So the next thing I'll do, and a lot of times I'll use the table. He's already got that behavior built in. So I'll go over to the table and I'll go give my hand signal, which is kind of a hup, okay? And I'm pointing to the table. He's already got this in. And I hit the button right before I start it. So Rocky, hup, and I'm hitting the button, right? Right as the dog's front feet hit that table, right as he touches that difference in surface, the button goes away, okay? And then I'll get him up and I'll get him high and drive a little bit. And then I'll say, I hit the button, then I'll get the dog to jump on the table again. Right when he touches it, the button goes away, okay? We're trying to convey the overall concept to the animal, and we're trying to give the power to the dog that he's understanding that his behavior is what's turning it off, okay? Now, do the table a little bit, get him in drive, come up, and you might want to go out and do the long line one too. Now you got two ones that you can work. Now, I wouldn't do too much of it because it's a little bit of stress because the dog doesn't understand it. I'm going to take him in a drive. I'm going to do some other things. I'm going to offset it by making sure I end on a high point, ball play, or whatever it may be, so the dog is happy. The last thing you leave the dog with in his head when you're working is something that's positive. Don't ever leave the dog in a positive place mentally and then quit your training then. That would be very, excuse me for saying it, stupid, okay? Because we always want to have a dog thinking positive thoughts about training, right? So we never want to leave the dog in a negative place. So that would be the second one that I would do, would be the table, okay? And again, it's something he already knows how to do, okay? Now the third one I usually do is I'll do my kennel, my very kennel, the boxes, because I always have my dogs kennel crate training, okay? They go in there and they sleep at night. If they're in for in-home boarding training, in kennel or in board training, if they're here, the first thing I do is I got to put them away at night. I put them in the crates at night to sleep, and I get them out and put them into their kennel during the day. Or not working them or whatever it may be, but they learn to be crated, okay, because it's a very secure spot. The dog has a very positive attitude about a crate. I use crates in my training. So because of this would be another area that I could do to be able to convey the thought to the animal very easily of turning off this stimulation, right? So the last one that I'll do, the three-way turn off, the last one that I will do is telling the dog to go to his crate, and as soon as he touches that surface in there, the stim goes away, okay? So I may take a couple weeks, a week, week and a half, 5, 10 days, whatever it may be, to go through each one of these things and then to start getting to why I know that the dog understands how to turn off the collar. The most important thing you will do with working with a stim collar is to do that good layering it in and doing it properly, okay? From there, I can start to use it in other ways, and we might want to go to areas, to levels that maybe a little bit more discomfort to the animal before I let go of the button. Or I might go to tap type things. Tap would be very equal to just you giving a jerk release on the collar. Very similar. But the good thing about the collar is that I can reach out to touch him. I can convey the thought to him that I have control over him from a distance, and he's not just under control when he's on the leash. Dogs get very savvy and contextual when they have something that they understand. Let me see if I can read some of these questions. We'll go over some more of this. But the biggest thing I want you guys to get out of this, and this is some of my, back to my opinions and the way I have an attitude about the stim collar, is the biggest thing is that you need to have some basic understanding of how to condition an animal, which means you should be using marker training. No good and yes, you've installed a lot of this communication baseboard with the animal. And then once you have that relationship with him, you have a good baseboard of communication, I would say at least have him trained for heel, sit down, stay, a basic come and a finish, okay? And then you might want to phase in with a collar. That's a very powerful tool. And I've used it in a lot of different ways and had a lot of success with it. Let me go ahead and read some of these questions if I have any. What age did you start using the Ecollar on Joker and Buddy? Buddy, I just probably started about 6 months of age. That's a good question because it's something that's happened. The same thing with Rocky. I basically work the animal and it's about maturity. And the animal starts to get a little cocky, starts to feel that he's in on all that and then some. And when I sense that coming from my Dutch Shepherds, this is a certain breed, but other dogs I'm sure are the same, where I will start to sense that dog has a certain maturity level that he's starting to try to kick back a little bit on his training, and he's being a little bit cocky. He's getting a little bit out of bounds, right? And then that happens, then I start to think, okay, it's time to go to the e-collar. So 6 months old, 4.5, 5 months old probably, but I don't like to do it when they're too young. I don't think the dog's nerves are well good, and I want to have a good communication baseboard set up with the dog so that I'm fair with the animal, okay? Because if the dog doesn't have that communication baseboard and doesn't have these behaviors built in where you say free honey, he goes out and does his own thing, or I say yo up to the table, or I tell the dog kennel when that's my command when I tell him to go to crate. Some people use crate. You can use anything you want to. But the crate training, whatever words you're using, they have that distinct understanding already because it's already been built in. That understanding is important to me because right when they go to comply, that's when the button goes away. You see what I'm saying? So there is no specific age. I just let my gut tell me that it's time, okay? Now, I just started with Zogo Argentina. He was about 9 months when he came in. I gave him a good baseboard of his basic obedience. And so the on-leash, we were using the old Ecollar method a lot, but we mixed in a lot of their stuff. And then I talked to customer into going back-to-back training, right back-to-back, 1 month and then another month. Usually I let them go home and they get home with the customer. I give the customer some lessons, and then I try to talk them into coming back into the next phase, right? With the Dogo, I didn't do that because I felt the dog really needed to make sure that we had a good, a lot better set-in platform of the communication baseboard with the animal before I let him go home and start working with the customer. I thought it was important because of the stature of the dog. He's a lot of dog, okay? It wasn't that he was a bad dog, excellent dog, but you've got to also remember that your customers have no clue. You know, they don't know anything about training at all. They're going to a professional because that's what you're there to do, to help educate and teach them, and they don't have a clue. So now you've got to try to build a relationship. Right now they're coming in with lessons from me after doing that. So there is no specific time. It's my gut telling me anywhere from 4 to 6 months, 7 months, somewhere in there. Every dog's different. We got DP Canine. How you doing, buddy? Michael Z. I'm not sure I know your name. I know DP Canine because he chimes in every now and then threads. Chuck Wheeler. I don't think I know you. Have you used Dogtra? Okay, so we're talking brands now. As far as brands, I've seen the Dogtra Arc, and I've seen it, and then I kind of let the community tell me what's going on with the collars. And I'm hearing some negatives about the Dogtra, okay? And it's that they don't hold their level. So if I set it on 7, I expect it to stay on 7, okay? And the Dogtra, from what I'm hearing, is that it's floating, okay? And this one's about 3 years old, and it's starting to mess up a little bit. I'm going to have to go buy a new one. So we'll talk brands a little bit. So you got Dogtra, you got Ecollar technology. Those are probably my 2 favorites that we hear about all the time in the working dog community. Those 2 collars. But there's other collars. There's one put out by Bart Malone that does the knee propos work, and some of you are probably familiar with that. And it's called the Chameleon. And that collar costs like $1,000. But Bart does a lot of real creative things, and he's leading the industry. Meaning that he just came out with the Chameleon maybe a year or 2 years ago. I don't know how long ago. But it was like $1,000 collar, $1,200 collar. I can't afford that myself. And I'm looking for something as a professional that's economical, that has what I need, and that will take a licking and keep on ticking, okay? So if a collar has a tendency to not be able to take the abuse I put it through, then I'm going to have a problem with it, right? But he has a lot of innovative things he puts into his product. There's nothing bad about having a Chameleon. If I could afford it, then I'd go get one too. One of the things he did was those little feathers. They were kind of a little wire that came off at it with a little bit of a, and it would get the lower in the skin, has a better job of keeping contacts. But then here's the industry for you. They're starting to catch up and keep an eye on this stuff, and you can go buy the little wings on their own by themselves, and you can put them on your in place of these little probes that they put on this collar. And most collar makers will have different probes. They'll come with a standard probe that comes in the box, and then if you don't like that, depending on your dog's thickness or long hair, short hair, whatever it may be, you may want different probes. But those little wings, I've been hearing some good things about them. So you can add those to this by just buying them as an extra off on Amazon, right? Which makes it pretty cool. The other thing that Bart had on his collar is what's called a finger kick. And that word comes from him because the Chameleon was the first one with it, which was this little extra controller that allows you to give stim, and you can strap it to your finger. So now I have what he calls it a finger kick, okay? And now I have a little button that I can touch to give the dog stimulation. I don't have any control over it like your regular controller. I can't lower or raise the levels. I can't hit the vibration. It's only going to be for the stim. Okay, but it allows you to have something, because a lot of the time when I started to work with an e-popo and I wanted to work with the sticks, as I was working, I had to put this in my hand, put the little golf club stick in my hand at the same time, and try to manage this all at the same time. It was a pain in the ass. Okay, I'll be honest with you. So what I ended up wanting, and I want, is one of the ones with a finger kick. And Ecollar technology has one that has that as an extra in the box. Okay, and that's pretty cool. And it's only about $250. That's economical. That's what the market needs to do. It needs to start catching up with the innovation coming from somebody like Bart. And I hate to say it, Bart probably be a little upset, but he needs to patent this stuff or do something to lock it down to stop them from doing that. But they're going to do it a lot more. That's just part of the industry. You know? Bart's a real smart man. He's got some nice stuff that he's put together, and how he uses it, and not just the e-collars. Matt Rupert would like to link this. Okay, would I link it to the food reward, Matt? In a general sense, I would. I would link it to the food reward in regards to having a positive for the dog. Okay, food works, right? And I want something that can use to condition the dog to say that is the right answer. That is the good thing, right? Here's the way I look at it as aversive in the old school Keeler method or any of that where we're using aversive, okay? And one of the best ways to explain it was a standard pattern that they had in that way. You would go out and you would do a right about turn. And you would give a good yank on the collar and you'd go the other way. There's a correction. The first thing the dog would see would be turn around and see you, and you'd be right there praising the dog to come back to your side. Good boy, good. You'd do another one. You do it in a pattern of 2 and 3, and then you would do a fourth one or a third one, whether how many times you did it, and you would be looking for the dog to be trying to understand that he needed to come back to you. And if he turned around and right away looked at you, you wouldn't give him a correction. You had to praise him into it, right? Praise him into that reward. And now he's starting to understand how to avoid that correction, right? And that's the whole point of view with an aversive pattern, Keeler, Collar, however you want to say his last name, method of doing the training. You're basically correcting the dog twice, and about the second or third time, you'd be looking for him to be trying to avoid that correction, and you'd be right there with praise to show him that, yes, that was the right answer. That's the way to avoid it. And the Stim Collar is very similar to that in how you use it, okay? But if you're not showing the dog how to avoid that correction, you're not showing the dog how to win, you're not being fair, right? So the way I explain that whole process with my customers is that aversive, it's kind of like going down the road, and you have a Y on the road, and you're right before the Y. You have a choice. I see the Y, I can go left or I can go right. And your job as a trainer is to make it a negative on the one side you don't want them to do, and the positive on the other side. And then the more you do it, pretty soon the dog starts to go, wait a minute, I don't want to go that way because that doesn't have any comfort. I don't like that way. I want to avoid it. And he's going to go towards the praise side. Your job is to always have that carrot out for the praise side. So yes, I would link it to food in that regard. That's what you heard me talking about when I said the first turnoff was the long line turnoff, where I said the dog's name, the stim went on, and as soon as he turns to me, I let it go, and right away I'm praising the dog into it, and there's food. I'm showing the dog how to avoid that negative, okay? And after a while, the dog starts to figure this out. He starts coming, and then the dog is empowered. If you've never worked a dog with truly the old style yank and crank and the old style aversive type methods, the dogs get proud. They get very happy with being able to avoid it. And once the dog finds the right answer and understands, and you're fair with consistency and pattern and everything you're doing, the dog starts to get high on that. And now the dog's attitude comes up. Okay, so that's the whole concept of aversive, the basics of the generalization of it, right? And the e-collar is very similar to that. But we want to start with the understanding to the dog to layer it in with that low stim. Okay, and then I'll do a lot of things in low stim and show the dog that he's winning by having the right answer. And my job is to show him where the right answer is at, right? So that's a general synopsis of it. So yes, I would in that regards, okay? That doesn't mean that I want to get the dog high on the food, but I want to show the dog the right answer and how to avoid that, okay? So if you want to learn more about e-collars and do it right, first realize that you need to have a good communication baseboard set up. You have behaviors already set up for you to be able to use. Otherwise, you're not being fair to the animal because he doesn't understand it. I would never just go out and start hitting the button with something that he doesn't understand how to turn off, right? So that's why we do the three-way turn off. And you can get into other ones too, for that matter, if you wanted to reaffirm the whole concept of it to the dog. You don't need to have three, but those three that I use, the ones that I gave you, which was the coming back to me, turning towards me and coming back to me, jumping up on the table, and then the crate are very easy for the dog to understand. Because if I've done the table conditioning right, the dog understands exactly what hup is. When I'm going like that with my body language, hup, right? I've hit the button right away, and right when he touches it, it goes away, right? And then we do the crate, same thing. He's got dirt or carpet or whatever. That's a different surface. As soon as he touches that plastic and he's going into the kennel, the stim goes away, right? It's very easy for him to understand that concept, and that's why I choose those. Some trainers will use the down. I find that every now and then you'll find a dog that gets confused and he sticks. He goes like this and he's on a sit and he says, I don't want to go there. So now I got to pull the dog down and I don't let go of the button until I've got the dog down. As soon as he's down, I let go of the button, okay? Because the answer always has to be the same. It always has to add up to 2 and 2 always adds up to 4. Otherwise, you're going to confuse the dog and it's not going to be consistent with what you're trying to convey to the animal. Consistency is the key, right? So, any other questions? We have 2 or 3 of them here. We've got 7 people in the room. That's better than none. I appreciate you guys stopping by. So I wanted to go through it. And the reason I did this is because I heard that podcast from Ivan the other night and with Larry Crone. And I was so frustrated because I know and understand the Ecollar very well. I've been using it for years and I understand it. And I read his book and I didn't like his book either. I didn't dislike it. Don't get me wrong. He's got a few things that I totally agree with. One, we never do something that the dog doesn't understand. Right? We do things that we're not teaching with the Ecollar, is what I'm telling you. Also, I always use low stim, and I use the same kind of thing that he does where I'm using a motivator to get back to me or a motivator when the button goes away, okay? So I'm showing the dog the right answer. Think about it. The dog's getting the right answer. Boom, right when he does, the stim goes away, and there's a lot of praise. I'm getting the dog through the stress of the Stim Collar. And if you don't think it's stress, it is. It's something new. He has no clue what this is, right? So the first thing we want to do is that low stim. So any other questions? I came with this on my mind with talking about the Ecollar. And I think this is going to probably be taped and play back, so it's no big deal. I appreciate you guys coming back, coming on. We're going to do more of these, I think, and I can get you a little bit more of an audience that comes in. If there's subjects that you would like to talk about, if you have questions about, ask me. You can do it here. You can send me a private message on my messenger off of Facebook. You'll notice something about me, guys. I don't do much marketing online. There's some trainers and some people that are out there, a lot of people nowadays, that do all this work in their online presence, their social media. Even to the point of you got guys that do the intros and a lot of the fancy film work that's done, you know, and that's great. And it makes us feel all warm and fuzzy because we've been watching TV forever, and this is kind of what we expect. But with me, I don't like getting tied down to the computer. So you don't notice that I don't have a web page. I don't do that because I don't need it. I've been doing this for 30, 40 years, and I've got plenty of clients. I don't need to go out and do all that work, so I don't need to be strapped down to my computer. I hate that. I started doing that. When Google came out with their platform, I was all over it. I built a list that I had like a good 400,000 people, but I was covering music at the time. It was a different thing. And I did these online interview type segments, and I had all the intros and the outros, and I had the graphics and all that, but that all costs money because I'm not an artist and I don't know how to do all that digital magic. I have to go pay for it, and I know where it's all at. I can go pay for it, and I can do that. You can get some of these streaming programs that can do all that for you, and it's all well and good, and I admire those people that are doing it, that are putting that work in. It's not bad. Okay, I could drop some names of some of the guys that are out there doing this stuff that I really respect the hell out of them because they're taking it to that next level with digital magic, right? And I'm 59 years old, and I'm just past that point of giving a shit because by next week, you know, it's Instagram is the big one. Then now TikTok, and by next week, Instagram will be dead, and they'll have another one, you know. And then you got to relearn and oh man, pain in the butt. Let the kids do that stuff. I'm not able to do that. Currently trying to teach my dog off-leash walking. Just purchased a dog tread 280C. Okay. The biggest advice I could give you is to do the on-leash stuff. Make sure the dog is conditioned well enough for the on-leash, that you've got that going, that you've installed your markers, no, good, and yes, okay, that you have the dog receptive to luring, and I hope that's what you're using. I don't know if you are or not as far as the method of training that you're using, but I use a lot of luring. I really believe in what Michael Ellis is putting out and his whole marker-based training, which is basically a hybrid derivative of click treat, but it's the same thing. We go with a clicker, and then we go to yes, okay? But I install the clicker first because now I've got something that's got very clear, concise. There's no difference in voice tone with this. The sound's always the same. My timing is very good, and I can practice my timing because with a clicker, I can catch that timing almost immediately, right? So timing is very important in training. And then I can move to the yes marker because I can't carry a clicker everywhere I go. But once I've conditioned in the clicker and the dog understands it, I can pull a clicker out anytime I need to when I'm teaching him something new and I'd like to use that as my application. It's a lot more clarity to the animal than just a clicker. You don't have as much information coming to the dog, right? So as long as you have all that installed and you've done a good job with all that, and you're trying to move to off-leash training, I would suggest getting yourself a little smaller. Go down to Home Depot, buy yourself something. They've got rope, a whole section of rope. They've got some that's really thin. It's like a shoestring. Grab yourself a 4-foot piece of it or whatever. Go up and take it and buy it and bring it home. Make yourself a little loop. So you're going to tie it in a circle with a knot, okay? And now you have 2 rounds on either end. And I can take that round and put it through the end of the choke chain on my pinch or whatever, and then I can tighten it up. And now I have a little tab that I can grab. It's very light. The dog can't feel, okay? And then I'll start using that, and I'll be doing my heel, and I'll turn my right about turn, and I might give a little jerk release for that and let it go. A lot of praise up into me, and then if the dog's going, I can do body corrections. I can kind of pinch on his side, pinch an ear, whatever it may be, so he understands I'm still in control even without a leash. And I would do that with that off-leash, standard off-leash way of working towards your off-leash work, right? And then once I got that established and the dog understood it, then I might phase in the collar and start using it, okay? But I wouldn't rely on the collar just to be my off-leash tool. You know, there's so much that's involved with training. You can do all kinds of things, you know. I just hate to have people start thinking that pushing a button is the answer. This is just a tool that we can use to help with our conditioning with the animal. And it's sending a signal to the dog learns to turn off in the beginning. As time goes along, I can go to tap, tap, and I can get a little bit higher where the dog starts to feel a tap when he's not doing the right thing. We can use it that way. There's 1,000,001 ways to use the Stim Collar, right? The biggest thing that I try to make people understand is that we have the tendency as human beings with our society with having a button, you know, a switch, my remote control. Our mental attitude is to go to this thing and to use it as punishment, okay? And I don't want you to think of it because that makes it only a one-dimensional, okay? I can hit the button and punish the dog and zap him for something, and that is only one way of using it. It's the wrong way. It's the negative way, and I'm going to try to avoid that at all costs and go a lot of different ways. And I like to look at it as 3-dimensional chess, okay? If I have a game of chess going, and the other person on the other side of the chessboard is playing me, and I'm playing chess. I don't know how many of you have played the game of chess before, but as you get better and better at the game of chess, you're basically projecting your mental look at the table out probably 4 or 5 moves. Those that are really good can go 6 to 8 moves, and they can project their vision of this board that many moves out. And those are the ones that are going to be better, and they're going to beat their opponent, right? Because they'll be able to stretch the mental brain, look at that table to about 6 to 7 to 8 moves out. That would be really good. Average is probably 4 to 5 moves out. Okay. Now think about it. If you add a 3-dimensional chessboard, you ever seen 3-dimensional chess? Now you got to think of this thing 5 different ways a Sunday, and your mental ability has to really stretch to be able to understand that 3-dimensional chessboard, right? It's a lot more entailed mentally to project your mind into a 3-dimensional. Well, this tool is like that. In other words, it has the potential to give you that much ability at doing things. It has a tone. Let me see if I can get this to work. Turn it on with a magnet for those of you that are not familiar with the product. And then I've got a button here that's vibration. I don't know if you can hear that or not, but I'm hitting the vibration button. That's what they call a pager. It basically kind of, and some dogs are so soft and so receptive to things, you don't ever need to even use the stimulation. You can use it on just the vibration, right? But it's a signal, just like the low stim would be a signal. And then you have the other one that's basically a button that gives a tone. And I'm not sure where the mic is on my monitor, but I was trying to get you. So now a tone, usually what I will do with a tone is I will turn that into my click treat. I'll turn it into my terminal bridge marker, right? So it's my yes, yes, and I go hot dogs, hot dogs, hot dogs. And I condition that as a terminal bridge marker because now I can use it with all kinds of, right away, when if you know anything about conditioning with classical conditioning and what we use that terminal bridge marker for, it's a classically conditioned sound. And at first we start with, and we're pairing that with the food, right? Well, the same thing can be done with that tone. And so now I have one more button on here that I can condition a different way to use. I can condition the pager to be another way. You know what I'm saying? So that gives you a lot of power. It's got a lot of ability, right? They've even got some of these that have all kinds of ability to program all kinds of fancy stuff into it. Now, I'm not attracted to that because it takes so much brain power to figure it out. And I'm going to tell you right now, as a trainer, you don't need it. You don't need all these fancy bells and whistles, because now you got to think 10 times longer, and you're not that good. Believe me, you're not. Keep it simple, stupid. KISS. Okay? So all I need is I need the variance of going from a 0 to about 100, 125. I need the pager, and I need the sound. And now I'm good with that. And then they have a light on this too. At night it's kind of convenient. I can turn the light on, it'll blink, and I can see where my dog's at from a distance. That's just kind of a little added extra. It makes a lot of sense. I've used it now and then. It's been a worthwhile thing. I turn on the light. Let's see if I can turn on the light. Oh, I turned it off. That's why. Turn it back on. And then it's got one that blinks. All right. And then it's got one that's solid. And then off. All right. So that's all I need. I just need the functionality of a collar. And this collar's got everything I need. I don't need to get stupid. Okay. Keep it simple, stupid. KISS, the KISS method. Any other questions? Let's see here. So again, Michael Z, I would go ahead and work your dog into a traditional way of going to off leash, which means that little tab that you're using, teach him that you still have control over him, get him more proficient in his other things, work him into a standard way of doing your off leash before you move into this. Okay, this is just a little added extra, and it's all about your skill level. Okay. I hate this. I will not give a stim collar to a new customer coming up. I want to get a stim collar because my dog's doing X, Y, and Z, and I want to get them to stop. All they're thinking about is punishment. They're only thinking of this tool in a one-dimensional way. And that's the last thing that I use is punishment. Do I use punishment? Sure. There's certain things that I'm going to use the punishment for. Okay? And I did this weekend with Buddy. Buddy ended up, he's getting a little bit older, and he's starting to get a little cocky, and I had him on a 20-foot long line, and I'll go out to the club, and I'll go way out, and I'll break my dogs. And I was letting him have freedom, letting him be a dog, and letting him go out and take his dookie and picking it up in my little Cooper bags, and having some enjoyment of just me and him being there. And for whatever reason, he got a wild hair. And he said, heck with you, I know these dogs are overdoing downstays over on this grass. I'm going to take on. He started going up that way. Buddy, with me, and he has a very distinct with me command because I put this on him every morning. He knows what with me means. I yelled it once, yelled it twice. My brain didn't catch up to what was going on. He was going to beeline over it. So I ramped it up. I hit the button until it came so discomforted. He turned around and went, oh, shit. And it was probably about a good 60 by the time he finally caught up with it, right? When he got back with me, I let him have some freedom. And then I said, with me again on a higher level to show him this meant business, that he needed to come to me. Because I'm not going to let the dog blow me off like that and not learn something from it, right? So I did it a couple times, ended it, went to the positive side, and we were done and over with. So there are times that I'll go to that. I'll go to a higher level. But 90% of the time, I'm on a low level, and I'm using the basic teaching the dog to turn it off, and I'm using it in that way. Okay. Would you recommend an e-collar for a first-time Dutch Shepherd owner? Planning on getting one in about 2 years, but still haven't decided. I would say no, because your question when you're saying this, and if anybody reads your question, is saying that you don't have any knowledge. Okay, you need to learn, you need to grow. I would never suggest this tool to you until you understand how to condition the animal and you have the dog to a certain level of proficiency, and that you are ready with your knowledge to be able to use the tool. Okay, ignorance is not good to have a tool like this. If you don't understand how to condition a dog, if you haven't conditioned your markers, no, good, and yes. If you don't have a conditioning baseboard and communication baseboard with that animal, you don't need to be using this, okay? It's not a button that's sitting there that you're going to just tap and solve all your problems. Everybody wants to solve a problem. My dog's getting in the trash. I want to zap him. My dog's barking at that. That's all one-dimensional, guys. That's only using it as punishment. This tool has so much more available to it, and punishment is the last thing that I want to go to. If I can avoid it, I will, but now and then I will use punishment. Why? My knowledge base is a lot more than yours. Okay, I've been doing this since I was 12 years old. I understand what that means, okay? And I'm not going to use it until I need to or until it's the right place, and I know the dog's going to understand it, be receptive to it, okay? It's not fair to the animal just to use it in that way. And why go out and pay $250 for this and kick the dog's ass with a button when you don't know what you're doing? You're gonna ruin the dog. You're gonna, I don't want a dog's belly on the ground and feeling like a sad sack. And look, I want a dog that's happy and that's motivated and I do all this conditioning to create that. Okay, I'm not going to bring a stim collar in and use it as punishment and kick the dog's ass and have his belly on the ground and ruin all my training. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to use it in the right way. I'm going to layer it in properly. So your education is key. The more you understand about how to condition the dog, classic conditioning, operant conditioning, and how to condition an animal, the better. And you're saying that, you say you're getting a Dutch Shepherd. And then my question comes to mind right away. How many other dogs have you owned? Are you even ready for a Dutch Shepherd? That's a lot of dogs. You'll hear me all the time when I do interviews with the clients who are going to buy my dogs, my Dutch Shepherds, and I make them get together with me online, and I make them get together in a room, and I talk, and I interview them. I want to know who they are, what their background is, what their knowledge base is, and I want to make sure that they're going to be a good fit for a Dutch Shepherd, and that means an experienced dog person, okay? I hate to say it, but a Dutch Shepherd's a lot of dogs, okay? And he will wind up and he'll get into reactivity and all kinds of other behavior traits because you don't know what you're doing, okay? And so it's not a good first dog, okay? You know the dog that's the best dog for the first dog? You got a child? Australian Shepherd, a cattle dog. Those dogs are like cutting through butter because their whole genetics is all about being receptive to voice tone, body language, and being very keenly aware of the owner's signals to them, okay? And they're like cutting through butter because of that. You want to learn how to train a dog? You want to get into training a dog? Go and buy yourself a cattle dog. I'm telling you, you'll learn more from that little dog than you'll ever learn from a Dutch Shepherd. You're outmatched, dude. And what happens is your ignorance and your not lack of knowledge with that animal will cause that animal to suffer, not you, because the dog will be too much for you. These behaviors will be set in. He'll be reactive. He may be real aggressive or whatever may happen. And now, because you can't handle it, your only answer is when that dog gets about 2-3 years is go to the pound and surrender your dog. That's not fair to the animal. That's the biggest thing. I've got a pet peeve about these Dutchies that I got. I get them because they're a challenge to me. Okay, they're a great dog, very smart, very receptive, but there are a lot of dogs. They're a working dog that's been bred for a purpose. And if you don't know what you're doing dog-wise, you shouldn't have one. Malinois are really too much dogs for most people. To be honest with you, they shouldn't have one because it's just too much dog. They're very smart, very intelligent, and they're going to end up being a lot of problems for a lot of reasons because you don't know what you're doing. So it depends on your knowledge base is a good thing to say to you, Matt. Okay. Any other questions or comments that I can respond to that I can help somebody out? Richard Garrett. Okay, we got 7, 3 pluses. I appreciate the pluses. Thank you, guys. And again, Matt, I don't link it to the food reward, but I want to offset the stress of the collar, and I want to make it a positive thing. As part of his, when the stim goes away, there's that positive, right? So that's the thing that I would do. And I've used the dog food collars, and again, that's the only thing I'm hearing things about them. Matt, let me see here. You'll hear anybody that gets into the sport. Let's say someone that wants to get into Schutzhund. They'll take their dog out there. They got a shepherd. They go out to Schutzhund and they sit on the bench and they start to learn what it's all about. And they'll tell you right off the bat as they do that, all this hard work to get their titles on that dog. Their first dog will teach them the most. It's not just you learning. It's that dog teaching you. How much you learn by having to deal with this dog and get him to do the behaviors. That dog is teaching you all kinds of things. Okay. My first dog was an Australian Shepherd cattle dog. And she was a great dog. I was 12 when I got her, and it was an excellent dog to have. I did a lot of my experimentation phase in that time period where I started to be aware of the fact the dog was very keenly aware of my voice tone, my body language, all these things that make a dog what a dog is. The cattle dog was an excellent dog for me. She was smart as hell. I taught her over 250 words. She was my circus dog. Her name was Princess. And I taught her to roll over both ways, to crawl, to limp like she was hurt. And that was the hardest trick I taught her. And then I taught her how to shake. I'd go like this and say shake, and she'd shake just like she was shaking water off of her. Say, bang, you're dead. She climbed trees. I had a little moped. I was about 15 years old, 16 years old. I was 12 when I got her, but you have this dog. And by about 15, I went and got a moped, and I built a box in the back of the moped, and she went everywhere with it. That's the way I got attention because people would, oh, look at. And so I was always showing off everywhere, and I still have that in me today. When I go out in public and I do all my work in public, it's because I love to show off. I love to educate and to teach. That's why I'm here. Okay, that's what then makes me. I was Mark Brasher, the dog trainer, before any other identity came to mind. I've been that way from 12 years age. So your first dog will teach you an awful lot. So making a good choice for yourself is a good thing. You'd be a lot better served to get a dog like that to learn and grow, and then decide to get maybe a dog that would be a working dog that might not. You could get a Rottie, you can get a Shepherd, you get all kinds of different breeds. You don't need to necessarily get a Dutch Shepherd. A Dutch Shepherd's a lot of dogs. I'll give you a good example of that. Nowadays, most dogs that you see in the police cars, 90% of them are Malinois. And every now and then you'll see a Dutch. And if you hear the law enforcement officers talking about the Dutchies, they will talk the other officer out of getting a Dutchie because they know how much of a dog that is. And he comes with a lot of different problems, okay? Because of their propensities to ramp up and have this drive, they're very prone to climb the leash, go after the handlers, all kinds of things that they will do because the handlers don't have a skill. They're not trainers, they're handlers, okay? And most of the time, law enforcement officers, whether you realize it or not, when they do their law enforcement officer and they pick an officer that's put in to be a canine handler, he's usually somebody that doesn't even have a dog, doesn't have a clue what he's getting into. And they hand him a dog and they put him through school. And the green officer and the green dog go through school together, and then they learn and grow, and then their department supports that officer, and the other officers that have been there longer and the trainer in that department will help that officer learn and grow, and he's going to grow his skill with time, right? And if he gets real good, most officers really, they're being groomed for management because there's a lot to deal with dealing with deploying the dog and how you handle the dog and everything. And they look at it as a kind of a little cherry on the top before they put him behind the desk to make him go to admin. So most canine handlers don't stay in canine all the time that long. There's some that won't leave because they love it so much and they want to stay there. But a lot of them end up getting groomed for management. It's an admin position change. It's a little cherry on the top. They get their little toys, and canine's one of them. Matt, let me see. Thanks for the input. I just might get a cattle dog. I was thinking about it, but I love the intelligence of the breed. I've been looking into training for a few years now. It's one of my favorite subjects. Very cool. I mean, the passion will carry you a long way, dude. That's what it's all about. Learn and grow. And get into Michael Ellis and his thing. One of the big things, maybe if you guys haven't heard me talk about it, there's you get on Learburg, and they have a full repertoire, a bunch of trainers and all kinds of different courses. I've got probably a good $1,000–1,500 worth of stuff, maybe even more, that I've got. It's all sitting in the library. Once you get that to live stream to yourself, you've got it. So it's like having a book on the shelf. I can pull it down anytime I want to. I can go look at it. But what I usually suggest for my customers is get that Forrest Mickey's Healer's Toolbox. Forrest Mickey is a protege of Michael Ellis. He's studied and goes along those same marker-based training techniques. And he's a hell of a trainer. He does seminars all over the place. Forrest Mickey's a hell of a trainer, but he's got a series he put together. It's called the Healer's Toolbox. And that is the one that I would suggest you get, Matt. If you want to learn about training, you want to get into it, it's Healer's Toolbox 1, 2, and 3. Get number 1, start studying. Use that as your base for how you build your dog, and go from there to get your learning process and learn and grow with your animal. It's an excellent series. I've got it in my library on Learburg, and I love it. You know what I mean? It's a good one. So it's called Forrest Mickey's the guy's name, and it's Healer's Toolbox 1, 2, and 3. Well worth it. Okay. And then if you're going to get a puppy, get Michael Ellis's How to Raise a Working Dog or whatever, anything towards puppies that Michael Ellis has done. There's a lot of trainers over there, and a lot of them are good, but I really want to stay to my marker-based training, and I go to those people that are using that base. Okay. And a couple of the other ones are using something that's a little different, and they're not emphasizing, not accenting marker training. Okay. And I really like that. It works very well, and it's a great thing for me to use to educate my customers. So one of the things we were talking about, getting off the subject a little bit, we'll get away from the Ecollar, was terminology. Words matter. In the old days, before we had the internet, we had trainers all over the place. And one guy would be across town or a county or 2 counties over, and he'd be doing his thing, and he would explain a certain way. And he would use certain terminology and certain words that were his, because we didn't have a baseboard of terminology, right? And then another trainer would explain, I kind of came up with it. I have all kinds of little fancy words, the powers of 2s and 3s. That's my little baseboard. If you ever watch my videos, you hear me talking about it a little bit. So I use terminology that I created on my own years ago, right? But here's what I like about the Learburg whole thing with Michael Ellis and that whole baseboard. Forrest Mickey is a communications major. And he added his ability at communicating. He's tied himself into what they put out as their product. And his words and his glossary of terms at the very end, all the scientific terms comes within that lesson format with the Healer's Toolbox. And then they put it out in other ones too, where now that terminology, threshold, motivating, competing motivators, all these stuff that's talked about in the science of dog training, they have a whole terminology. And I love that, because now everybody is going to be using the same words. If they adhere to that and they start studying it, now we can all start to say the same thing in the same way. And now you understand what I'm talking about. When I say thresholds, Matt, you understand what I'm talking about. You understand competing motivators. There's all kinds of different things, that are used in the terminology. That's a scientific-based terminology that is really cool for all of us to be using the same words. Words matter. Right? Let's see, Kyle, what do you got here? When dealing with destructive behavior, do you have to rely on the crate and free him with supervision until he grows out of it? Or do you use the act of God corrections in this situation? Depends on the age of the dog and what you're dealing with. If it's a young puppy and he's got a high energy outflow and he's a puppy, he's doing it because he's teething. He's doing it because he's a puppy. Okay, so we use the crate as a control factor. Okay, the leash is a control factor. The crate is a control factor. He can't get out and get into negative things, get into going after a wire and chewing up a wire, and you're not paying attention. The dog chews up a pillow and it's all over the place. That becomes from a natural instinct of puppy behavior. They don't know any better, right? So we use a crate to contain that. So now he can't get into those nests, so he doesn't learn negative things, right? So in a general sense, I will not use a corrective measures and the act of God or anything to do with what we were talking about. Stim Collar doesn't come into that. We use control factors. We use things that limit that behavior, and then we redirect. What we'll do is I'll get up here. I'll be right back. 10 seconds to come over here and grab. I've got little 2 bones, but I had a little hoof. I'll get these little $1.99 hooves down at the store when I have a puppy, and I'll buy about half a dozen of them, and then I'll set them in places that I'm going to be, in my kitchen, in my living room, on the table, on my nightstand. I will set them everywhere that I can get to them. And then when a dog starts to chew on something he shouldn't be chewing on, I will correct the dog in a polite correction. I might even take my finger and kind of tap him on, no, take it out of his mouth, might pop him in the nose with it, fooey. And then I'll grab what I do want him to chew on, and I'll redirect him and keep him involved with this. So you have a negative correction, but at the same time, you're redirecting what you do want him to chew on. You're teaching him this is bad, this is good. So that's what you would do with a puppy. So that's what I think you're asking me, is something that's a young dog. It depends on why the dog is doing what he's doing and how bad the destructive behavior is. If it's an older dog that's really being destructive, is it handler dependency? Is it handler anxiety? Because the person's been there. You heard a lot of that lately in the last year or so. Everybody dealing with the pandemic, we're all trapped in our house. Nobody was going anywhere. We're at home. The dog sales went through the roof. You couldn't find a dog half the time because everybody was buying dogs to have a companion at home and to have that pet. Now they're home all the time. That dog, being a very natural instinct for the dog, he sucks into that pack instinct and you're always there. Now what happens if you go back to work? What happens? The dog's going to be full of anxiety, full of behaviors that are going to outlet because now you've changed your pattern of behavior. And I used to see it all the time. I grew up in a college town, and the kids would go out and get a dog in the summer. They'd get a dog, and how cute, and they'd take him to the beach with them. That dog would be everywhere with that kid, all right? And then all of a sudden, school starts again. Here, Mom, put him in the backyard, not do anything with him, and what's going to happen? All kinds of destructive behavior, digging, chewing, because now he doesn't have his dependency that he had before, and that anxiety comes out, and he's going to outlet natural behaviors that dogs do. He's going to get in trouble. Right? So, trainers, we've been talking about it already. We all knew it was going to be a thing. We're going to have a lot of this, if it isn't already starting, that people are going back to work and they've had their dog for 6 months or half a year or a year, and the dog's been with them everywhere because they're home all the time, right? And then when you separate, the dog goes through separation anxiety, and that's where all these behaviors outlet because of that. So, let's see, Australian Shepherd Cross from an Australian Shepherd Collar called a Texas Healer. Okay, thank you. That's very cool. Appreciate that, Richard. I'm always open to learning new things. I didn't know that, so I'm learning something. Never stop learning and growing, folks. No matter how smart you think you are, there's always somebody going to walk in and teach you something if you're willing to open your mind and listen to learn, right? That's what it's all about. And that's the attitude you guys should have. When you're trying to learn, Matt, when you want to learn this stuff, you want to get into dog training, Have the attitude that you never know everything. I I started saying, and I'll say every now and then on my videos, I know everything and I know nothing. And I know nothing before I know everything. And I hope I feel that way when I'm 85. I need to change that to 105 because 85 is coming up pretty damn quick. But in a general sense, what it means to me is that you never stop learning and growing. And as soon as you stop wanting to learn and you think you know everything, you might as well just take a bullet and shoot yourself in the head because life is over with at that point, right? So that's my point of view. And that's a very healthy attitude to have if you're going to get into being a dog trainer. Let's see here. On here, I got a Malinois pit mix 18 months ago. I thought he was a German Shepherd dog mix, and it's been a wild ride. I bet. So what's been so wild about it, Matt? You've got a Pity Malinois mix. That is an interesting mix. I've seen some interesting ones. I'll tell you. I've seen a Bulldog mix with a Malinois, and the genetics don't really go well. The dogs are something else, you know. Malinois with a pit. I'm trying to picture that, what you're going through. A high energy outflow with a pit bull. Huh, interesting. Pit bulls are good dogs. To be honest with you, it's one of the first dogs I was around as a kid. I've talked about it before, but I was raised in foster homes as a kid. And I was with a Mexican foster home, and the guy was into fighting pit bulls. And so I was around the pitties. And I didn't go out to dog fights or nothing. He always took them out somewhere else. But I was around the pitty, and when I was around him, there was one of our bitches, one of the females, that ended up getting out of the pen, and we had a pony. The pony was in the yard. And she got out and started chasing after that pony, and it took about 3 rounds around that pen, and boom, lunged up, grabbed that pony by the neck, and needless to say, the pony was dead. And we were over there beating her up with a 2x4 and couldn't get it. So ever since then, I turned off on the pit bull. I don't hate them. I don't dislike them. They're a good dog, but I'm very aware of their propensity. You know, their prey drive is very high, and they have a propensity that can get them in a lot of trouble. And so that's, you know, it's not something I don't talk down on pit bulls. There's a lot of great pit bulls, and it's how they're raised, like any other dog. It's how they're raised and what you do with them that matters. Remember my little famous saying: a dog's a product of 2 things: his environment and his genetics. Right? You are his environment. Okay? Genetics, like you're talking about your pretty Malinois mix. You've got what you've got genetically wise. But you are the product of what that dog is going to become and how you raise it. Okay, they turn out to be a great dog if you do the right thing. Right? So, yeah, that online stuff is good stuff. Now, the only reason I don't sign up to it because I'm always thinking about the cost. And with my background and knowledge base, I can get the online schools and do what's called an auditing. So I can do the self-auditing ones where I can just watch them, and I don't have to be strapped to be there on a certain night of the week. The live classes are kind of neat because you're in the same room with the man, right? That's a neat thing. But at the same time, it's going to cost you more, right? So I get the videos that are self-auditing that already are on the backside, have already been done, and now he's going to take that format and he's going to put it into the book on the shelf, right? That I can stream and I can go through. Some of those courses are pretty cool. The ones that I get, I can stream it. I can watch little videos and then have a good text amount too. I can read and I can do that, and I can take it off the shelf anytime I want to. I'm not dictated that I've got to be there a certain night of the week. And that's just my personal preference with my background in training. Right? I don't need to be in that room. It doesn't float my boat. But you know, you don't have any knowledge, it may be good for you. It's up to you. I usually wait for them to come out, wait about 6 months for the price to come down, and then I go buy. It's just my way. Oh, it is what it is. But Michael Ellis is good. He's one of the best teachers that I know out there as far as the trade and learning how to train dogs. It's a very good base board for you to have. So. All right. I don't even know how long we've been here. We started at 6. What time is it now? Now 7. It's already been an hour, guys. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it off. I appreciate you guys for stopping by and checking it out. I hope I was able to give you some information and give you some enlightenment as far as the tool of the Ecollar and some of my philosophies. If you want to learn more, go on to my YouTube page and where the banner is at on the top and scroll over and find the community tab. I have a whole set of lessons under Rocky on the Ecollar that I went through with Rocky when I was phasing in the Ecollar with Rocky. And I have a bunch of lessons in regards to the Ecollar. And then don't forget to look for the Dobbs site. and get online and read some of those articles so you have a good understanding of how they use the e-collar and what they're doing with that. That is my base sport of my start with the e-collar was with the dogs. I did a lot of reading and did a lot of studying it. I've been to seminars and stuff on this stuff as well, but at the same time, I think the Dobbs and what they did for Tritronics and the information that is available to you is some of the best stuff out there. And you'll find trainers are using some form of this, no matter what they say. I mean, Larry's methods are a little different. It doesn't communicate as well as I'd like him to, as far as how he describes things and how he describes to do things. But he got a hell of an audience base. He's got a lot more numbers. I don't even know how he does it. He's doing the same thing I do. I mean, he's just yakking at the screen with no digital magic. So the people love it. So he's got a lot of the same philosophies I do. Care about your customer. Have a really good attitude about caring about the customer and the service you give them. Care about the animal. That's important. So that me and Larry have a lot in common in that respect. So don't get me wrong in that. So I'll let you guys go. Mark Farasha with ProTech. You guys have a good night. I thank you. Bye-bye. I don't know how to get out of here. There we go.